On one hand, the Bucks just got absolutely obliterated by the Memphis Grizzlies, but on the other hand, a Thanasis free throw at the end of the game saved them from a historic loss in the Mike Budenholzer era. The Bucks go down by 41 points to the Memphis Grizzlies. Literally nothing went right in this game, but we are going to break it all down and discuss whether it actually means anything and are there any concerning trends, at least to keep an eye on moving forward as this schedule starts to get difficult.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Bucks. My name's Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on this show Monday to Friday and also find my work over at ESPN. And alongside me, an equally displeased founder of brewhoop.com and longtime voice of the podcast, Frank Madden, for today's episode that's brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. And if you're a Milwaukee Bucks fan, I doubt you would have been going to Bet Online and giving the Memphis Grizzlies a 40-point head start, but they would have covered it. And this was a disastrous game. We should say we thank everyone for still listening and venting with us, potentially live now on the podcast. But whenever you get to listening to Locked On Bucks, we appreciate it, whether it's on the audio platform or on YouTube. We thank you because we don't have too many nights like this, Frank. But this game started absolutely awfully for the Bucks. They weren't able to find a way to score. They weren't able to slow down the Grizzlies. But we've seen it in stretches before, but this just did not stop. And as I said, they were 1 point off a record loss under Mike Budenholzer. What's your first thoughts? We're about 20 minutes after this game finished here.
I mean, it was just as big of an ass kicking as you're going to see in the NBA, right? I mean, and it wasn't just Memphis hitting a bunch of threes and kind of just having like shooting luck. I mean, physically, you know, Steven Adams like beat the crap out of Giannis in the like legal good way. Like Giannis, I mean, just couldn't figure out Steven Adams. And I mean, Dylan Brooks just dog walked Chris Middleton that whole game. Like that might be the worst I've ever seen Chris Middleton look in a Milwaukee Bucks uniform. He's 1 out of 12, 5 fouls, 4 turnovers. Had no chance tonight. I mean, he looked awful. And Dylan Brooks just physically just dominated him. And, you know, I mean, yes, the Bucks were missing Drew Holiday. Memphis was also missing Desmond Bane. And it just felt like, you know, again, just the physical tone, the energy was just completely lopsided from the start. And there was no, you know, we talk about the rubber band effect where, you know, teams build up big leads and then, you know, kind of take their foot off the gas a little bit, or the other team, you know, mean reverts a little bit. Man, we really didn't see any of that until just the complete garbage time portion of the game. I mean, I was just, let me see if I can just bring it back up, but the Bucks were outscored by at least 13 to 15 points every quarter for the first 3 quarters. I mean, it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And yeah, I mean, they just got annihilated. And, you know, I'm kind of curious. So the Bucks were +5 net rating. I think they had a 106.6 defensive rating coming into this game. I mean, that's going to look way different tomorrow morning after these stats hit the register. So yeah, I mean, they were just crushed inside, you know, what was it? 44 paint points, I think, in the first half. Just Memphis kind of got where they wanted when they wanted, and the Bucks could not get to the rim. They could not shoot threes, which was really the only thing that they kind of had as options. And so, yeah, it was just a complete ass kicking. And, you know, again, I think especially it's like these teams are never going to play each other in the playoffs unless there's some, you know, long shot finals scenario. But you know, Memphis has been the team that like people sort of like don't really want to take seriously, as like, I think everybody sort of wants to treat Memphis as though they're too young to be like a legitimate title contender, but they kind of keep doing stuff like this, right? And they won 56 games last year. They've won 7 games in a row now. They're near the top of the West. You have to take them seriously because they're really good. And, you know, a team like the Bucks that everybody looks at as a contender, again, night to night, during the regular season, they're going to have games, especially given kind of the sort of team they are, where they're just not going to have it, and then they're just going to quit. And that's kind of what happened tonight. So I think it says maybe less about the Bucks and more about just how good the Grizzlies are. But yeah, I mean, again, like you can probably count on one hand games that were as just physically lopsided as what we saw tonight during the Bud era.
So you mentioned the 44 points in the paint, and clearly there was some, and there was, well, let's just say there was an extended garbage time in this game, but they finished with 86 points, and Jim Ozowski from the Journal Sentinel at one point pointed out that the Grizzlies had more points in the paint than the Bucks had total in this entire game, and the Bucks have been right near the top for defending the paint throughout the season, but it's not often you say this, and we looked at the Houston game the other day, and I did a solo podcast after that, and I said, honestly, it looked like the Bucks were just taking the piss out of their opposition. They thought that they were just going to sleepwalk to a win. On this occasion, they just didn't look like they were up for the fight. The Grizzlies smacked them early, and then the Bucks really just were like, I don't know if I'm up for this. And clearly they're a super physical team, starting with Steven Adams. Brook Lopez got in early foul trouble. But let's focus on Chris Middleton just for a second here, because he's played a few games back. Clearly he's struggled. He's had some decent moments. Bit of a sugar hit the first game. He looked like he was maybe adrenaline helped him there, but you mentioned it, but 1 for 12 from the field. And in the end, he picked up it looked like a couple of fouls where he almost wanted to get out of the game. And Bud's like, I'm just going to leave you in there, man. You're about to come out of the game for the rest of the game. If you foul out, we don't really care. Get up a few more shots, see if you can do something. But even before he got that flagrant foul, which again was a very weird incident where he just grabbed the leg of Dylan Brooks, Brooks was up in his face for a few possessions there, and it looked like it was going to be a long night right from the start. It's no surprise to anyone that there is starting to be some growing voices on Twitter about, Chris Middleton's in trouble. He's old. He's unathletic. The decline has started. He hasn't played basketball for 6 months. He's played 7 games. It's going to take a significant amount of time for a guy that has historically had some slow starts over the course of his career. But do you have any bigger picture concerns for Chris?
I mean, I'm not saying hold your breath until he starts playing more consistently. I mean, he was, pretty good in the last game, had his first 20-point game since coming back, 20 points on 13 shots. Again, padded by a bunch of technical free throws. But, his passing, I think, has been there since sort of he's come back. I think the passing, we've seen since the first game has still been good. I mean, even on a night like tonight where he just stunk, he's, I think, still had 5 assists. So, I mean, the playmaking, I think, is still largely there. But, yeah, I mean, again, this is kind of always this debate, like, with guys who are more skill-based and less athletic, is the argument, well, they're going to age well because they have that skill and that can kind of carry them longer versus the counter argument be like, well, when you don't have much athleticism to begin with, then, when you lose it on the margins, then you start to get in trouble real fast. I mean, I think he's on a 10 to 8. I would sort of veer more towards, I think historically, I think the numbers would suggest the former is generally more correct, that skill guys do age a bit better. But the problem is he obviously just, is struggling to get into a rhythm, and he doesn't, I don't think he's in shape relative to, what you would expect of him when he's kind of fully healthy and ramped up. So, yeah, I mean, the question is like, he's had 2-3 weeks now. So you have to hope that at some point soon he starts to look a bit more comfortable, a bit more consistent. Obviously this game was a bit of an outlier because kind of everybody was bad, but he was the worst, right? I mean, he was the guy that stood out as struggling the most in a game where pretty much everybody did. So I don't know. I mean, again, it's like, let's see how this goes. I mean, obviously I'm as big a Chris Milton fan as they come, but when a guy stinks, you got to call it out. And it's less that he's been just uniformly bad since he came back, but it's just, obviously just the consistency isn't there. And obviously just the rhythm is not there right now. And so you just have to hope that it comes sooner rather than later. I think he'll obviously be much better than he's been so far. But who knows? I mean, again, what will Chris Middleton get to? Will he get to the levels that we saw 3 years ago, the levels that we saw 2 years ago, a year ago? Is he going to be slightly worse than that? I don't know. Right. I mean, I hope he gets back to where he was during the better parts of certainly last season at 31. It's not like he's, like really far down the aging curve. I mean, at his age, he should still be physically, the same type of player. And I think, again, probably what we're seeing now is just more of just the fact that he hasn't played live action, hasn't gotten into game shape. which again, as we talked about, he was coming back, even though he didn't have a leg injury or something that would prevent you from doing cardio and stuff like that. At the end of the day, is you can ride a bike as much as you want, but playing in an NBA game, the rhythms of an NBA game is just a bit different. Obviously, he didn't have any, G League games or anything like that to get ramped up either. So let's just see how it goes, right? I mean, I think we've seen him have some good games, right? So it's not like he's just been uniformly bad, but the consistency hasn't been there. So I think now the question is, how do you stop having these terrible games and just get back to a baseline of, at worst, decent, and at best, all-star level, really good, which is obviously what we know he's capable of, and which, I mean, again, there's no reason why he can't get back to that, especially given, the fact that he was playing late last season with a torn ligament in his thumb. Hopefully right now, obviously you think he's healthy, and now it's just a matter of getting conditioning and rhythm back. So we'll see. And obviously on a night like tonight, when you don't have Drew, then it becomes far more obvious because you have to play through him more than you otherwise would. So, we'll see. But obviously, if he can start playing better sooner rather than later, that would certainly be preferable, because on a night like that tonight, obviously he was not contributing to anything positive.
That's right. And if someone is a little
and
bit,
by the way, that was a straight up dirty play. The tackle of Dylan Brooks. I mean, Brooks is, a dirty player, probably. I don't think he did anything tonight that was like, it's not like he was playing dirty against Chris and he was just playing physical. But, Chris, I mean, that was early in the game, right? Like, I think Chris kind of lost track of the ball. He thought it was near him. He kind of grabs him, but then like grabbing the guy around the leg so he can't run. I mean, that was a bush league play by Chris, and it would have made more sense to do that if it was like the third quarter and you're getting blown up by 40. But that was early. I mean, it was the game wasn't a blowout at that point. Like you can tell though that it seemed like Brooks got under his skin really quickly, and yeah, I mean, just a forgettable game in pretty much every respect.
I don't know if it's a dirty play. Nothing's going to happen.
If Dylan
Nothing's
Brooks
going to happen.
that,
there's going to be no injury though. It's a flagrant foul, but there's no injury happening. It's not a dirty play.
But you don't grab guys around the legs when they're trying to run, though.
Yeah, but he's not getting hurt. It's not a dirty play. It's just a dumb play, and it's a flagrant foul.
It's bush league. It's a bullshit play. I mean,
well, I live in the bush.
Well, you do. It's an outback play.
It is nearly the holidays, though, which means that people will be getting festive. There's no doubt about that. Really, last day of the office. It's Friday afternoon right now. Last day for most office workers in Melbourne, if you get that Christmas period time off. So people are going absolutely ballistic in the city right now. It's a dangerous, dangerous time out there. But if you're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks, a few can become too many pretty easily. And the evening comes to an end and people start to head out. You think of calling for a ride, but then you think you're going to drive. Don't do that, because if you think that the odds are low that you'll have a crash or you will, your insurance will go up, you'll lose your license, all that kind of stuff, you can really seriously hurt people and change lives forever as well. Everyone knows about the risks of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads here in Australia or on your roads in the US to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again, drive sober or get pulled over. And we're going to talk about prize picks now, and I pity any of our listeners who had the over on any prize picks projections tonight on the Milwaukee Bucks. But if you aren't aware of what prize picks
game over, the game over hit. I think the regular game, I don't normally pay attention, but I think the regular game was like 226. So, hey, as long as you pick the total score of both teams, you were fine tonight.
Well, the problem with prize picks is it's players and they have to score more or less than the individual projection. So if you had the over on the Chris Middleton points, I got some bad news for you. But prize picks overall. AJ
Green, Marjan Beauchamp, hey.
Probably, no doubt.
You pounded the overs on those guys.
That's exactly right. And the good thing about prize picks is there's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. Not just NBA. I think there was some NFL on tonight, so you could have had a look at that. Baseball, whenever it comes back, they'll be absolutely into it. See the Brewers are making some trades, but all the sports you can think of, hockey, everything in between, college sports. So entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. They're safe and fast withdrawals. Just download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit 100, Prize Picks will give you 100. If you deposit 50, you'll get 50. Pretty simple formula. Don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100, Frank. All right, speaking of dirty plays, we did see one of the most violent acts we've ever seen when Bobby Portis looked like he may have just slapped Santi Aldama on the shoulder, and he went down like he was going to need a full shoulder reconstruction. Look, we're going to have some fun on this podcast. I say if you go to review and you see that that's a clear flop and this guy's cracking up laughing after he goes off, it's reversed and Aldama gets the flagrant foul for a flagrant flop. I actually thought from Bobby Portis that was going to be much worse. I was surprised when I saw the replay that there wasn't much in that. What do you think?
Did he even go? I'm trying to remember the play. Did he even go down? I don't even remember Aldama even really going down in a sack in like a heap. Did he actually go down? I mean,
he was rolling on the ground for about 15 seconds, holding his shoulder.
Okay,
embarrassing stuff.
Yeah, Bobby Portis definitely not above the frustration foul, let's say. But Santi Aldama is Spanish, so as a fan of La Liga, Spanish soccer, let's just say this was some, hey, when a little bit of La Liga flopping, maybe he's trying to get the yellow card shown to Bobby. He got the flagrant, so I guess win-win. And why would anything? It's that kind of night, Kane. You might as well just chalk up another flagrant for just a frustration foul for them. But so it goes.
We have a comment here from HP Printer that says, when is Drew back? It's hard to say. I mean, this illness, Frank, has been going through this Bucks camp for several weeks now. And we saw players, as you mentioned, Marjan Beauchamp got some minutes in this game. But I would say that I'm not expecting Drew to be back in the next couple of games just based on the timelines that Serge Ibaka, Marjan Beauchamp, a few of these other players have had with this illness. But they definitely missed him tonight. And Javon Carter, yeah, we spoke about him. We started with all the praise with Steph Curry. But the Ja Morant type player is a difficult challenge and an entirely different challenge when you're talking about the athleticism of this man. He tried some of those absolutely absurd dunks and finishes around the rim. He was able to jump over anyone and everything in sight. I don't know whether Drew Holiday changes that too much, Frank, particularly on a night like tonight, but it was a tough night for Javon. It was a tough night for everyone overall. Is there anything that you looked at tonight that, as I said, I mean, you mentioned the overall dominance of the Memphis Grizzlies, but is there anything you looked at that particularly pissed you off from this performance from the Milwaukee Bucks?
Well, I mean, Ja was like 5 for 15 for 15 points to start the game. Like I think that was his numbers around halftime. So, I mean, really, Ja was not really like the pro. It wasn't like Ja was just going nuclear. I mean, he finishes with 25 on 21 shots, but he did have the 10 assists and only 1 turnover. So it was more as his playmaking than his scoring. I mean, all you can be mad about is just the Bucks just getting punked from the tip, right? And honestly, it's like, I mean, I expected them to lose this game, but the fact that they could not, literally they just got worse and worse. They gave up 33, then 37, then 47 points. I mean, they just got worse and worse over the first 3 quarters. Again, you would kind of hope that at some point the pride kicks in or something, but no, we didn't really see much of that tonight. And I thought this was a game. We've seen a lot of these games where Giannis just, especially defensively, it just feels like he's kind of I'm not going to go crazy tonight. And when they went small, there were a number of plays where it was just they're just driving at the basket and Giannis is just kind of making business decisions. I'd say this is one of his least impactful defensive seasons, and in part because they really haven't needed him to be the anchor of the defense with Brook playing at such a high level. But yeah, I mean, nothing went well. I mean, Giannis was a -29, Chris a -28, Javon -28 as well. There wasn't a whole lot. I mean, hey, the Bucks only had 9 turnovers, Kane. So that's good. Giannis only had one turnover, which was on a charge. Talking about Santi Aldama going on like a heap of potatoes, sack of potatoes, heap of something. That was on a charge. He eagerly bit the dust on that play. But yeah, I mean, Giannis now, he's had this weird streak. I think his first 6 games, he was 50% or better from the field. Then he went 6 straight games, 50%, under 50%. Then he went, I think, 8 games, 50% or better. Now he's 3 straight games, under 50%. So he just kind of is, in a scoring funk. 8 out of 13 from the foul line. His free throws obviously have been spotty of late. So again, he's just been kind of, streaky this year. And I don't know. I mean, like he's not. I mean, like the way he is right now. Like, I know you talked about yesterday about the ringer thing having him at number 1, but like, I mean, he's not. I don't think he's. Is he a top 5 MVP candidate? Yeah, probably somewhere in that range. But I mean, he really has not, like, in spite of like the scoring numbers being like, still close to 31 points a game. Obviously, it'll drop tonight. His numbers have been probably the worst that they've been, like from an efficiency standpoint. Maybe a couple of years ago, kind of close to that. But the scoring efficiency has been way down under where he normally is. And yeah, I mean, just I don't know. I think he did hit a couple mid-rangers tonight, and he did hit a 3, which was good to see. But it just feels like that in-between game just continues to, more so the other night than maybe tonight. But just feels like he's been kind of just trying to find a rhythm, which again is crazy to say of a guy who's averaging close to 31 points a game, which is a career high. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing, right? I mean, if you want to look at it, maybe an upside here, Bucks are 20-8, and Giannis has not, kind of reached consistent Giannis like greatness. I don't think on both ends. I think he's got another gear, and I think his tendency has been like last year. His numbers like after January 1st, I think it was, were just like insane, and we know he's obviously fully capable of doing that again. So I think it's just a matter of probably, with Chris, obviously it's a little different coming back from the injury. With Giannis, I mean, we've seen him reach incredible heights already this year. We know what he's capable of, but again, he's just now in kind of one of these multi-game funks where he's not playing, I think, at the insane uber best player in the world level that we know he's capable of. So hopefully we get back to seeing that sooner rather than later, because obviously against the likes of the teams that the Bucks have on the schedule right now, and if Drew's going to be out another game or two, which I don't know, like I have a hard time seeing Drew being out like 2 weeks or something. I think because with Marjon and Serge, I mean, those guys weren't playing anyway, right? So it's kind of like, could they have played at some point sooner, but they just didn't because Bud didn't want to play them anyway, and it was like, whatever. I don't know, but hopefully, obviously like Giannis, we talked about him looking sick a couple weeks ago. He didn't end up missing any games. Hopefully Drew starts to feel better, and maybe he's back in a game or two. Fingers crossed, because the schedule's not doing them any favors, right? I mean, they could start to pile up some losses if they obviously with the lack of without Drew, your margin of error is lower. So we'll have to see. But obviously next game against Utah at home, that you get that one home game, and then have to play a bunch more road games. So as good as Utah's played, I mean, you really want to bank that win just to kind of get this taste out of their mouth. I'd be very, I don't want to say I'd be very worried, but it would be very disappointing. Let's put it this way. It'd be very disappointing after a game like this where you just get, absolutely stomped, that you go home against a team that you're better than and lose again. So I would certainly hope that we will see a much better effort from the Bucks on Saturday night. But again, I mean, nobody's laying down for you, at least not usually. So we'll just see how things go.
Giannis still 76% at the rim before tonight. I think he's working really hard, and this has been a little concern. We've spoken about it a little bit with the struggles.
He's had to. I wish he didn't have to work so hard. Yeah.
That's all right. And so sometimes
offensively, yeah. Defensively, I don't know if he's working that hard, but offensively, he's had to work really hard.
Yeah, it's just looked at times, particularly tonight, when you get Steven Adams, who is a physical force. He's probably like, geez, I really have to do this again. Okay, we're down 20. This is not the night for me. And not to say that he didn't get to the free throw line a little bit. Robbie says Giannis just needs some dog in him. As we've always, as was always said, Frank, commitment to the cause has been a big concern with Giannis. Robbie comes up with some of the most interesting takes. I'll say that in the YouTube stream. But
that's got to be a joke, right? That's got to be just a PJ
no.
Tucker
He's
joke,
been on
doesn't it?
Giannis for all season. It's been interesting stuff. But betonline.net is the place to go. It's your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball and the World Cup. Only one game to go in the World Cup. Frank Madden's Argentina versus France.
Nobody's France.
It's all there at betonline.net. Damian Inglis will be watching that game. So if you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at betonline.net.
Hugo Besson, your boy.
Hugo Besson. He'll be watching. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. We did have a comment here. Let me scroll up and see if I can we can find it here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it, but the overall idea that the Bucks, as you pointed to, with their record right now, and that's why I think when I had Camille on the podcast earlier in the week, I said, geez, let's actually find out over the next 6 to 7 games whether the Bucks are any good right now. And there's obviously mitigating circumstances for why it might be the case, but they got a response in the Golden State game, who admittedly have been struggling on the road. But now, as you mentioned, with Utah and Cleveland, and the Pelicans are in there, another really athletic team that I could see causing the Bucks some problems. Thankfully, they're also in the West. But is there anything tonight with Giannis specifically in terms of, we always talk about a formula that can make life difficult. Is there any other teams that have the Jaren Jackson Jr., Steven Adams front court in the East? I mean, we've spoken about, obviously, Joel Embiid and PJ Tucker. Boston with Rob Williams and Horford.
And Grant Williams. I mean, the three of those guys, because, Grant Williams isn't challenging him at the rim, but he's, built like a brick shit house and flops. Like, he's got good feet and he flops, which is, if you have like a shot blocker and a flopper, that's like the perfect 1-2 combination against Giannis, right? Like, guys that will frustrate him potentially 2 different ways. So if you can roll out 2 bigs that, can make it hard for him to get to the rim, then I think that's probably your best odds of slowing him down. I mean, in theory, Philly with PJ, defending him individually and be behind him, but I was really impressed, because Adams 1v1, I don't think it started that way tonight. I think Jaren Jackson might have had him initially, but Adams really defended him 1v1 a lot, and I thought did a really nice job. I mean, if Giannis has a long runway, it's one thing, but especially in the half court, he just never had enough room to really get ahead of steam going against Steven Adams, and Adams blocked him, must have been a couple of times, as he just sort of got under the rim or just, was spinning into traffic or whatever, and just couldn't do anything. So,
well, it's not, because we had a mention in the comments here of Cleveland as well, but probably the difference with Cleveland is they can't actually physically body Giannis. Like, that's where things change a little bit. Like Giannis, there was a couple of times even on box out situations tonight where Steven Adams just was not moving anywhere when Giannis was sort of getting into him. And I will say Steven Adams, one of the more likable guys in the league, and that's tough for me to say with him being a Kiwi, but I do like the way that he just picks up NBA players. He did it again to Giannis today. Giannis was on the ground and Steve's like, I'll just pick you up, mate. Don't worry about this. I'm going to scoop you up like a little child. And Giannis did turn around, because I think that's normally the type of thing that would annoy him, but he seemed to take it in decent spirits. And at one point, Steven even was resting his chin on his shoulder. So look, we're all friends here. I don't think Steven Adams is a guy that too many people want to fight, I would say.
But I mean, he's like, I don't know if anybody is better at like being physical without like ever being like dirty, like people do dirty shit to Steven Adams, like Draymond Green kicking him in the nuts, every game or whatever. But he's, he's definitely, top 5 NBA dudes that, if you had to like hang out with them for an afternoon, like who's on that list? Like, oh, hands down, Steven Adams is on that list. So yeah, I mean, it's hard not to root for him, and he's part of the reason why I mean, just generally, it's a really likable Grizzlies team for the most part. And yeah, I'm just looking at some of the numbers too. I mean, the transition numbers tonight, Memphis was plus 10 points per 100 added via transition. That's like cleaning the last stat, which is like 93rd percentile. I mean, you talk about just kind of effort. I mean, the Bucks, I'd say transition defense just in general has not been, let's just say, as high effort this year. There's obviously the offensive rebounding that they're trying to do more of, which is contributing, I think, to that somewhat, but just some really lazy transition defense tonight. I think Bud and the coaching staff are going to have no lack of film to use if they want to have a little bit of a chat tomorrow ahead of the next game.
Robbie's bounced back. He says, don't you think that's kind of just genuinely who Steven is, though? I've seen a couple of videos of him saving guys from falling hard. Yeah, I think most people generally around the league think he's a good fella. I remember the first time I ever interviewed him, he was walked out of the shower, and he is a humongous man. He was butt naked with a towel around his waist and a towel around his hair because he's got obviously long, beautiful hair. And he had a bag of red frogs. He said, come over here, bro. You want to talk? I was like, all right, man. And he offered me red frogs. We sat there. We shared a bag of red frogs.
What are red frogs? Is it like candy or something?
Oh, it's like a. I mean, it's. I know that this is not adding much to the description, but it's literally just little, like jelly red frogs. I don't know how else to.
Soap like candy. It's like a candy treat type thing.
Yeah, I guess so. And that story has brought Michael to say, is this Locked On Bucks After Dark? It did seem like it was heading down a sinister direction, but no.
Well, I was the way you were describing Steven Adams, like you threw me when you said that he had a towel on. I thought we were going to get a much more lurid description of Steven Adams, and
no,
I thought you were going to say manhood, not large man, but yeah, I don't know. This is but yeah, he seems like by the way, that impression you just did of him sounds like what's his name? Taika Waititi's character from the Thor movies, the rock crack, whatever, K or something. But he's like, hey bro, what is is the bruh thing, is that like a New Zealander thing? Do Aussies say that too?
I don't really say bro, but certainly Kiwis say bro a lot.
Yeah.
I just went to my first trip to New Zealand about 6 weeks ago, and there was lots of bros. I got called bro a lot. We have got the real winner, though, as we wrap up this podcast. Gia, who says, I thought they played tomorrow. Glad I was confused. That is the winner of this podcast. Not watching a second of this game tonight because you didn't think it was on. So shout out to you. That's very well done. And then you still get to just have
I
some
wish
fun
they were playing tomorrow and that they didn't play tonight. That's for sure.
Well, Bucks get blown out. We're talking about Steven Adams' manhood. Well, I mean, that's not technically where the story went. I was just telling a genuine story of interviewing an NBA player. If you want to take it there, that's up to you. But no, fantastic podcast. Let's wrap it up.
Have you ever seen the movie Hunt for the Wilder People, the Taika Waititi movie?
No.
It's good. I enjoy it. Sam Neill's in it.
Oh, yes. Of course.
He's Australian, right? Sam Neill's Australian. Yeah.
Of Jurassic Park fame.
Yeah, exactly. Sam Neill's in it. It's a Taika Waititi movie. Good heart. Enjoyable film. I feel like they have guys who talk like Steven Adams in that movie because it's set in New Zealand.
All right. While we're... By the way, just quickly, so we have a comment here. Do you think the outcome of this game would have been different if we traded for Jay Crowder? I hate to say no, I do not. Before we go, last one, non-basketball related, because we just we don't need to talk about this too much more. White Lotus. So I put on my Instagram the other day that I was going to start watching White Lotus. I didn't actually start watching it, but overall, we may as well talk about it in front of the people. You recommend that I watch it, right?
Yeah, I mean, and the irony of this is that I'm a pretty big movie TV fan, more TV than movies at this point. And when it won all the, I think at the Emmys, it won like all the awards for limited series. I was really annoyed because I thought the first season was pretty overrated. Like to me, the first season is kind of one note. It's like, oh, all these annoying rich people who go to this nice resort and they suck, and the help has to deal with them. It's like, yeah, they suck, okay, but like I didn't think it was really that interesting. Also, be aware, despite what the first like part of the first episode sort of sets in motion, like the first season is not a murder mystery. I think that was part of why I was like, I kept waiting for it to have like to be like a murder show or something, and it's not really what it's about. The second season though, I really liked, really enjoyed, thought it was much more interesting. So that's why I was telling you, like, I would just skip the first season because only Jennifer Coolidge carries over between the two seasons, and you pretty much know exactly what she is. Wait, so Nikki's telling us that Sam Neill is a Kiwi? He's not an Aussie? You're claiming him as an Aussie?
I apologize to Nikki. I thought Sam Neill was Australian, but Nikki, rightfully, as I Google here, yeah, absolutely a New Zealand actor. So, look, we've done it before.
Oh, man. We got to do these live pods just to have people fact check us. That's Kane. I mean, trying to claim Sam Neill,
bad.
right?
That's bad. I apologize. Bad. That is honestly unintentional. Frank will know that it's not personal. I just know nothing about movies or TV shows. So that's just my horrific knowledge. I would not claim a Kiwi. We love them, though. We love the people from New Zealand. Clearly,
by the way, I watched Jurassic Park, the new Jurassic Park movie the other day. I mean, whatever. It's fine. It's a Jurassic Park movie. Sam Neill looks great. I got to say. Sam Neill, he's 75 years old. Looks great.
Incredible.
Looks great. No wonder you were trying to claim him. But Sam Neill doing well. Enjoy the role.
That's it. Once we get to Jurassic Park, we call it. Thanks to everyone for jumping in the stream. Normally, we talk a lot more basketball than this, but let's be honest.
The Bucks didn't play much basketball tonight. The Bucks didn't play much basketball, so what do we have to talk about? We don't have much basketball to talk about.
This is a night we're all going to quickly move on from, I think. And as I said, it's absolute chaos in the city of Melbourne. So I'm going to put this podcast up, and I'm going out to cause some absolute havoc in the city. And we'll podcast at some point. Whenever the Bucks play next. They're playing the Jazz, I believe. Hopefully they bounce back and win that game. Thanks to everyone for jumping on. Make sure you subscribe and turn the notifications on YouTube, as clearly a lot of you have. That's why you're with us tonight. We appreciate it. We'll be back very soon for the next podcast. Congratulations on surviving that game tonight.